There's some bad news out of Florida that we need to talk about. So if you're interested in learning about why smalltooth sawfish in the Keys and the Florida Keys are dying by spinning around and just dying, you're going to want to listen to this episode because that's what we're going to be talking about. Why this is happening, if we know or don't know, what the rescue efforts are like, and we'll find out a little bit more on this episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. Let's start the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin. This is the podcast where you find out what's happening with the ocean, how you can speak up for the ocean, and what you can do to live for a better ocean by taking action. And just a little note before we begin in talking about the smalltooth sawfish, the first thing you can do to help learn or to help take action against the ocean and live for a better ocean is you can learn about the ocean by signing up for my newsletter. It's speakupforblue.com/newsletter. And all you have to do is just go to the website, sign up. The reason why I'm doing this is I want people to be aware of what's happening in the ocean. I can share more stories. I only do 3 episodes a week, and I want to share more stories, so I do it Monday through Friday. I send out a newsletter. Some of the latest episodes on my podcast, the Beyond Jaws podcast, and other podcasts within our network, as well as some jobs and some news. So some of the people are talking about they love the newsletter because they get news that they don't normally get, or it's at the very beginning of the news cycle and it hasn't hit their algorithms in their social media yet, or wherever they get their news. So sign up, speakupforblue.com/newsletter. It's all free. You just go to the website, put your email in. I don't share your email with anybody. I don't sell your email. It's precious. I know emails are precious. If you want news and jobs into your inbox and you want to find out the latest podcast we've been putting out, you can do that right away. Go to speakupforblue.com/newsletter and sign up for free. All right, let's talk about these sawfish. Now, sawfish is a really interesting species, especially these smalltooth sawfish. They're a species that are about 7 to 14 feet long. They are like a flat shark, if you think about it. They look somewhat like your typical shark. They have a dorsal fin. They're very long. Their tail is vertical, and it's got the 2 lengths that they're going behind. I don't even know the names of them are. My biology is really bad right now. By the way, my voice is a little bad. I've had hockey all weekend with my girls. They both made the finals. I'll let you know. I'll probably know the result by the time you hear this, but I'll let you know what's happening. But anyway, regardless, my voice is a little hoarse right now. But these sawfish are really cool. Like, you see them in aquariums all the time because a lot of people have programs for these endangered species, breeding programs, so that you get more and more of these species, and hopefully one day they could be released or they preserve their genetic material, specific genetic material. It's very, very scientific and followed very carefully. But there's a population in Florida, in the Florida Keys, and right now there's a problem, because it seems like these smalltooth sawfish are succumbing rapidly to a mysterious fish ailment ravaging the Florida Keys. Essentially, what's happening is we're seeing reports coming in that these animals are spinning around in circles and circles and circles, all to like the same side, and then they just die. And so it seems like there's something in the water that's not right. And they said the level of mortality on an endangered species is unprecedented, and therefore, to some degree, this is an unprecedented response because they have to have this response. This is from Adam Brame, Sawfish Recovery Coordinator for NOAA. That's the National Oceanographic National Oceanographic. This is from Adam Brame, Sawfish Recovery Coordinator at NOAA Fisheries, and it's one of the government agencies working with a network of private aquariums and nonprofits to capture the fish and bring it into captivity for safety. Now, this is an endangered species. Okay, it was the first marine fish to receive federal protection under the Endangered Species. It can live 30 years. It was first documented to be under the Endangered Species Act in 2003, and conservation efforts have been successful, slowly building the sawfish population back up until now. We've seen a number of individuals die. And so this is a big problem. The entire U.S. population of sawfish depends on Florida, which is a lifeboat population. This is from Giannis, a marine biologist and shark expert at the Florida International University, who is not involved in the rescue initiative. So this is just by email he said this. And he says, this is what he says, this is such an urgent response, is to suddenly start losing all of these animals could be potentially catastrophic and could potentially turn back decades of conservation. Now think about this. You have an animal that is part of the Endangered Species Act. Now the reason why it's part of the Endangered Species Act is because the populations have fallen below a specific level that is dangerous to going extinct, right? Now you have this specific piece of legislation that calls on emergency responses. So now there's a special focus on this species to build the numbers back up to hopefully historical, quote unquote, healthy figures. That is difficult to tell because, when we started monitoring a lot of these species, we didn't know much about them. So we don't really know about their historical populations and what they should be at. We just know that they're really, really getting critical and that this is a problem. So when you get designated as an endangered species under this act, there are special studies, there is special legislation that goes into play where protections come in. Like you can't fish them, or you have to be careful of what size you take, or there's protections on specific habitat in which they occur in. And so there's a lot of different protections that happen, and it all depends on the species. The manatee, the Florida manatee, is also part of the Endangered Species Act, and their population went from like 600 to 66,000 or 6,600, which is big for a long-lived species over a number of years. I think it's like 40 to 50 years. So having a species that is building up since 2003 is really important. But unfortunately, when you have these critical events like this, these unfortunate events like this, where you see a number of fish species dying, this is a problem. Now, this is not the only species that has had this problem where they start spinning around in circles and dying. Since November 2023, a total of 57 species in Florida have displayed the spinning behavior caused by an unknown culprit that is still under investigation. Now, there is a theory that this culprit is some sort of dinoflagellate or some sort of small microscopic animal, a bacteria maybe, or something that's allowing this water quality to get bad. Florida is not known for the greatest water quality when it comes to fish species or even manatees or even just a lot of nitrates that cause, seagrass beds to to get covered in algae and blue-green algae, and the smell is awful. It's had problems with red tide in the past, low oxygen, temperatures, parasites. It could be really anything. And so we just don't know exactly what it is. It could be a microscopic algae for all we know. Red tide is really caused by a congruence and an aggregation of a small microscopic dinoflagellate, and it has like the great temperature, great wind patterns, or the right wind patterns. You have high temperature and then the right nutrients, and you get red tide, and that can be devastating. It's been devastating in the Gulf of Mexico for a number of years, off and on. So this is something that obviously there needs to be a rescue. There needs to be something that happens, and there are rescue efforts going on. So essentially, what happens is when a sawfish is reported to sort of exhibit this type of behavior, the rescue starts to come in. So to rescue these rays, there's a recovery team that has a monitoring hotline. The public calls that hotline, and then the team gets dispersed or dispensed to that area. And so once it's reported, they try and track the fish. They will try and find it. They will take blood samples. They will try and tag it. But if it's possible, they will try and capture it. Once they capture it, they put it in a 30,000-gallon moving aquarium, which is a truck, and it goes to Moat Marine Laboratory and Aquarium, and that's where it's taken care of. And so the idea is you have pristine water quality. You know what the water quality is like. You know that there's a good potential that it could survive. And once it recovers, they'll keep it there until we know this problem is done. We're hoping that this problem is just something that flew in and is going to fly out just with the currents. But it's been going on for a little bit, and so they're just worried. But once we know that the sawfish are good to go and the event is over, there will be a release of these healthy sawfish and hopefully, bring it back into the population. It's not an easy thing to do. It's not an easy thing to detect. There's going to be a lot of water quality samples taken where these fish are dying or where these fish are exhibiting this type of behavior, spinning in circles. This is something that goes on every once in a while. And here's the thing, when you talk about conservation of these species, when they go through an event like this, it's water quality. A lot of times it has to do with water quality, especially when these fish are dying. I remember, when I was in Nova Scotia, I had a fish tank. And it was a great fish tank. I had a marine fish tank, and I had all these tropical fish from a reef, and they're all fish. They're all reef friendly. I stocked it. It was using it as a display tank to show what type of species I had, because I was selling marine ornamental fish from my house to a local community because it was so expensive to do that. I wanted to make it for a little cheaper. I liked having marine fish tanks. I don't do that anymore. I just find that the industry is too destructive in terms of a lot of fish dying during that time. I didn't know that at the time. But regardless, I remember one time I had this wonderful tank, and I was watching TV, and I was watching the tank, of course, because that ended up a lot of times being my entertainment. And all of a sudden, when I was watching TV, I noticed out of the corner of my eye, a fish, it was a tang, and it just started going up in circles. And it was like doing like a loop-de-loop and a loop-de-loop and a loop-de-loop. And then it just fell on the ground in the tank. And it was just, trying to breathe. It was like, you can see it was struggling to take the water in, the oxygen and the water in. And eventually it just died. Then I saw another fish start to go, and then another fish start to go. And I started to see that, the tank started to get a little cloudy. And I was like, what is going on? And then I look over to I had a water pump that was moving the water, was circulating the water. And I look over, and the sea cucumber that was that I didn't realize, like I didn't order, but it was in my order, hence one of the reasons why I don't have a marine aquarium anymore, was wrapped around the intake of the pump, and it was getting destroyed. And when sea cucumbers get into some sort of pain or some sort of life-threatening injury, they eviscerate their insides of the stomach, and essentially it becomes toxic to a lot of other species, which is what was happening here. So when I saw these animals die, not people, I saw these fish start to die. It was scary. I had to do water quality changes. I had to get the sea cucumber out and into a different tank. It eventually survived, believe it or not. But I had to get it out. I had to do a number of different water quality changes, which was very stressful on the tank because, you can only do a certain amount of water quality changes because there's all this bacteria in there. You can't just put fresh salt water in there. And so I went into emergency mode. It was very difficult to handle. I lost, unfortunately, a lot of fish that were in there. And my tank was really never the same after that. Now imagine that in the big ocean. You can't do water quality changes, but if it affects an area and especially a species that size, from 7 to 14 feet in length, you've got a big problem here. That's a big ocean. And so that means there's a lot of whatever it is that's killing these sharks and these other fish species, 57 other species in the ocean. There's a high level of something in the ocean that is not good. And now you look at why is this happening? It could be because of elevated sea temperature. We've known off the coast of Florida in that area, last year especially, we were hitting record highs over 100 degrees Fahrenheit in the water. Very, very scary for that. We just don't know what that brings. And so, consistently having higher and higher temperatures for longer and longer periods is going to bring these types of diseases and more of these types of events. Now, I don't have evidence to back that up. We just know that, with higher temperatures comes more stress on fish. Just to survive in general, they'll be more susceptible. And when you have an endangered species like the smalltooth sawfish, where the numbers are already low, an event like this can really decimate a population. It could really decimate a species. And like I said before, Florida is its home. Florida is its breeding ground. It needs to have the habitat in pristine condition, or as pristine as possible, and not have whatever's in the water kill it. So this is going to be devastating to the conservation efforts. It's going to be devastating to the population. And hopefully it will be done soon, and we'll figure out what it is and how to prevent it in the future. And that's the episode. That's the news I have. It's not good news. What's good about this news is that there are teams that are out there to rescue a lot of these smalltooth sawfish, and I think that's really important. I think it's important to have boots on the ground, or flippers in the water, if you will, and to get these sharks out and to find out more about it and to save these sharks as much as possible. So that's it for today's episode. I'd love to hear what you think. You can go to my Instagram, DM me at How to Protect the Ocean. That's at How to Protect the Ocean. And don't forget to sign up to that newsletter, speakupforblue.com/newsletter. Just put your email in. I'll send you a newsletter 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. And it'll have news. It'll have updates on the podcast that we put out, Beyond Jaws, How to Protect the Ocean, and others, as well as jobs. job ads if you're interested in looking for different types of job ads. Not just science, not just conservation. There's some that has business aspects to conservation. It's going to be, it's pretty cool. I like a lot of these jobs that I find and be able to post to you. So anyway, that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next time, and happy conservation.